The Millionaire's shocking discovery. The afternoon sun bathed the imposing Blackwood mansion in golden light. Located in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods of New York City, it was home to one of the city's most affluent families. Alexander Blackwood, heir to a business empire and a prominent figure in high society, walked distractedly through the marble hallways of his home, lost in thoughts about his next corporate merger. Having just turned 35, Alexander was the very image of success. Tall, with chiseled features and hazel eyes that denoted sharp intelligence. His perfectly styled black hair and tailored suit completed the image of a man who had everything under control. However, fate had prepared a surprise that would shake the foundations of his perfectly ordered world. As he turned a corner, Alexander came face to face with Emily, the new maid who had been hired that very week. For a moment, their gazes met, and Alexander felt a strange familiarity in the young woman's dark eyes. He was about to continue on his way when something caught his attention, a glimmer on Emily's neck. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackwood," Emily murmured, stepping aside to let him pass. But Alexander remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the necklace adorning the maid's neck. It was a simple piece at first glance, a thin silver chain from which hung a small rose-shaped pendant. However, to Alexander, that necklace was much more than a simple piece of jewelry. "That necklace," he whispered, instinctively extending his hand towards Emily's neck. The young woman stepped back, surprised by her employer's reaction. "Is something wrong, sir?" Alexander blinked, realizing how inappropriate his gesture was. "I'm sorry, Emily, it's just that necklace looks familiar. Could you tell me where you got it?" Emily brought her hand to the pendant, caressing it in a gesture that seemed more reflexive than conscious. "It's a family heirloom, sir. It's been in my family for generations." Emily's words echoed in Alexander's mind like a distant echo. How was this possible? That necklace, that silver rose, was identical to the jewel his grandmother had shown him in secret when he was a child. A family relic believed to have been lost for decades. "Emily, would you mind accompanying me to my study? I'd like to ask you some questions about your family," said Alexander, trying to maintain a casual tone despite the storm of questions swirling in his mind. The young woman nodded, visibly nervous. "Of course, Mr. Blackwood." As they walked to the study, Alexander couldn't help but glance sideways at the necklace. Each glint of the silver seemed to mock him, as if it held secrets it refused to reveal. Once in the study, an elegant room decorated with dark wood and bookshelves filled with volumes, Alexander invited Emily to take a seat in front of his desk. "Emily, I know this may seem strange, but I need you to tell me everything you know about that necklace. Who gave it to you? What do you know about its history?" Emily, visibly uncomfortable, fiddled with the pendant between her fingers. "My grandmother gave it to me on her death. Before she passed, sir. She told me it had belonged to her mother, and to her mother's mother before her. She always warned me to keep it as a treasure, that it was more valuable than it seemed." Alexander listened attentively, each of Emily's words confirming his suspicions. This necklace was not a mere coincidence. "And what do you know about your family, Emily? Where do they come from?" The young woman frowned, as if trying to remember details of a story told long ago. "My family is originally from a small town in Virginia, sir, but I don't know much beyond my grandparents. There were always silences when I asked about our ancestors." Alexander leaned back in his chair, processing the information. Emily's story, though vague, fit perfectly with the rumors he had heard as a child about a lost branch of the Blackwood family. "Emily, what I'm about to tell you may sound incredible, but I believe that necklace has a connection to my family, to the Blackwoods." Emily's eyes widened. "To your family, sir. But how is that possible?" Before Alexander could respond, the study door burst open. Sophia, his fiancée, entered like a whirlwind, her face a mask of irritation. "Alexander, where have you been? We've been waiting for half an hour for the meeting with the wedding designer, and you—" Sophia stopped short upon seeing Emily. What is she doing here? Alexander stood up, aware of how compromising the situation might appear. "Sophia, darling, I was having an important conversation with Emily about—" But Sophia didn't let him finish. Her eyes fixed on Emily's necklace, and for an instant, Alexander thought he saw a flash of recognition in her gaze. It was just a second, but enough to plant a new seed of doubt in his mind. "Emily, you may go," Sophia said in an icy voice. "My fiancé and I have matters to discuss." Emily quickly stood up, mumbling an apology before hurriedly leaving the study. Alexander watched her leave, aware that the interrupted conversation was just the beginning of a much larger mystery. "Can you explain what's going on, Alexander?" Sophia demanded once they were alone. Alexander looked at his fiancée, a beautiful and ambitious woman with whom he had planned to unite two of the most important fortunes in New York. But at that moment, for the first time since he had known her, he wondered how much he really knew about her. "Sophia, there's something I need to investigate. Something related to my family's history," he replied, deciding to keep his suspicions secret for the moment. "And that involves locking yourself away with the maid," Sophia retorted, her voice laden with sarcasm. "Trust me, love. There's more at stake than you can imagine." As Sophia began to talk about the wedding preparations, Alexander found himself looking out the window towards the gardens where Emily had disappeared. The necklace, that small rose-shaped pendant, had opened a door to a past he thought he knew. Now he was determined to uncover the truth no matter the cost. Who was Emily really? What secrets did the necklace hold? And most importantly, how would this discovery change the future of the Blackwoods? Alexander knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Fate had set in motion a series of events that threatened to reveal long-buried secrets, and he was at the center of the approaching storm. The next morning dawned with a grey sky over New York City, as if nature itself sensed the storm brewing in Alexander Blackwood's life. Seated in his study, with an untouched cup of coffee in front of him, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about Emily's necklace and the implications it could have for his family. With determination, he stood up and headed to the family library, a vast room filled with ancient books and documents that narrated the history of the Blackwoods. It was time to dust off the past and search for answers. As Alexander rummaged through old albums and boxes of documents, the library door opened silently. It was Sophia who observed him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "What are you looking for with such fervor, darling?" she asked, approaching him. Alexander hesitated for a moment before responding. "I'm investigating a part of the family history that seems to have been forgotten." Sophia arched an eyebrow, intrigued. "Does it have anything to do with the maid and that necklace that caught your attention yesterday?" "It could be," admitted Alexander, surprised by his fiancée's insight. "There's something about that necklace that seems familiar to me, as if it were a missing piece of a puzzle I didn't know existed." Sophia sat in a nearby armchair, her expression unreadable. "You know you can count on me for anything, right? After all, we'll soon be husband and wife." Alexander nodded, although a part of him wondered if he could really trust Sophia fully. The memory of that fleeting flash of recognition in her eyes upon seeing Emily's necklace still unsettled him. "Thank you, love. For now, I need to focus on this investigation. There's something important I need to discover." Sophia stood up, softly kissed Alexander on the cheek and left the library, leaving him alone with his thoughts and doubts. Hours later, when the sun was already setting behind the city's buildings, Alexander found something that made his heart race. It was an old photograph, yellowed and worn by time. In it, a young woman held in her hands a necklace identical to Emily's. With trembling hands, Alexander turned the photograph over. On the back, in elegant but faded handwriting, it read, "Mary Blackwood, 1920. "Mary Blackwood," Alexander murmured. He had never heard of her, and yet there she was, an unknown Blackwood with the mysterious necklace. Determined to get more answers, Alexander called Emily to his study. The young woman arrived minutes later, visibly nervous. "Emily, I need you to tell me everything you know about your grandmother and her family," Alexander said without preamble. Emily, surprised by the direct question, hesitated before responding. "My grandmother's name was Caroline, sir. Caroline Johnson. But now that I think about it, she once mentioned that wasn't her real surname. She said her mother had changed it when she was young, but never explained why." Alexander felt his pulse quicken. "And what else did she tell you about her mother, your great-grandmother?" "Not much, sir. Only that she had come from a wealthy family but had given up everything for love. She always talked about it as if it were a great romantic tragedy." As Emily spoke, Alexander couldn't help but notice how her features, which had previously seemed common to him, now resonated with a familiar echo. The same dark eyes, the same shape of the chin. How had he not seen it before? "Emily, would you mind if I do some research into your family?" Alexander asked, trying to maintain a casual tone. The young woman looked at him with a mixture of surprise and concern. "I don't understand why you're so interested in my family, Mr. Blackwood. We're simple people. We have nothing to do with your world." Alexander approached her, showing her the photograph he had found. "I believe our families are more connected than you think, Emily. Look at this." Emily's eyes widened as she saw the photograph. "That necklace, it's identical to mine. But who is she?" "Her name was Mary Blackwood, and I believe she could be your great-grandmother." The silence that followed that statement was deafening. Emily seemed to struggle to assimilate the information, her hand instinctively clutching the necklace. "But that would mean that my family," Emily stammered, unable to finish the sentence. "It would mean you're a Blackwood, Emily. Part of my family." Before Emily could respond, the study door burst open. It was Sophia, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her gaze alternating between Alexander and Emily. Alexander stood up, aware of the delicacy of the situation. "Sophia, I can explain. We've discovered something important about my family's history." But Sophia didn't seem to be listening. Her eyes had fixed on Emily's necklace, and for a moment, Alexander thought he saw fear in her gaze. "That necklace shouldn't be here," Sophia murmured, more to herself than to the others. "What do you mean?" Alexander asked, feeling he was on the verge of a crucial discovery. Sophia seemed to realize her slip and quickly composed her expression. "Nothing, just that it's not appropriate for a maid to wear such eye-catching jewelry." But Alexander wasn't convinced. There was something more, a secret that Sophia seemed to be jealously guarding. "Emily, you can go for now," said Alexander, not taking his eyes off his fiancée. "We'll continue this conversation later." Once Emily had left, Alexander confronted Sophia. "What do you know about that necklace? And don't tell me nothing, because it's obvious you recognized it." Sophia collapsed into an armchair, her facade of confidence crumbling for an instant. "Alexander, there are things from the past that are better left buried. Believe me when I tell you that continuing to investigate will only bring trouble." "Trouble for whom, Sophia? For me, for you, or for someone else?" The tension in the room was palpable. Sophia stood up, smoothing her dress with a nervous gesture. "I'm just asking you to be careful, love. Sometimes the truth can be more dangerous than you imagine." With those cryptic words, Sophia left the study, leaving Alexander with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, in the mansion's kitchen, Emily stared fixedly at her necklace, Alexander's words echoing in her mind. Was it possible that she, a simple maid, was actually part of the powerful Blackwood family? What none of them knew was that, at that precise moment, a mysterious figure was observing the mansion from the street, his gaze fixed on the window of Alexander's study. The man took out a phone and dialed a number. "Sir, we have a problem," he said in a grave voice. "Young Blackwood has started asking questions about the necklace. I think it's time to implement the contingency plan." On the other end of the line, a voice responded, "Very well, do what's necessary, but remember, no one must discover the truth. The Blackwood legacy depends on it." Night fell over New York City, enveloping the Blackwood mansion in shadows. Within its walls, long-buried secrets were beginning to awaken, threatening to forever change the fate of all involved. Dawn found Alexander Blackwood in his study, his eyes reddened from lack of sleep and surrounded by ancient documents. The night had been long, filled with fruitless searches and unanswered questions. The mystery of the necklace and Emily's possible connection to his family obsessed him. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his musings. It was Martha, the housekeeper who had served the Blackwood family for decades. "Mr. Alexander, may I come in?" the woman asked, her voice laden with concern. "Come in, Martha," Alexander responded, rubbing his tired eyes. Martha entered, closing the door behind her. Her face, lined with wrinkles that spoke of a life of service and loyalty, showed an unusual seriousness. "Sir, forgive me for meddling, but I've noticed your interest in Emily's necklace and in the history of her family. I think there's something you should know." Alexander sat up in his chair, suddenly alert. "What is it, Martha? Please tell me everything you know." The old woman approached the desk, lowering her voice as if afraid of being overheard. Many years ago, when I was young and had just started working here, I overheard a conversation between your grandfather and a man I had never seen before. They were talking about a woman named Mary and a scandal that could ruin the family. Mary? Alexander interrupted. The woman in the photograph. Martha nodded. Yes, sir. They mentioned that Mary had run away with a lower-class man, taking with her a very valuable family jewel. Your grandfather was furious, saying they had to find her at all costs. Alexander felt his heart beating strongly. And what else, Martha? Well, the unknown man promised to take care of the matter. He said he would make Mary disappear and recover the jewel. After that, the topic was never spoken of again in the house. It was as if Mary had never existed. The revelation fell on Alexander like a bucket of cold water. Was it possible that his own family had been involved in the disappearance of one of its members? Martha, why hadn't you told me this before? He asked, trying to maintain his composure. The old woman lowered her gaze, ashamed. I was afraid, sir. Your grandfather was a powerful and fearsome man. Besides, I swore loyalty to this family. But now, seeing how things are unfolding, I felt I should tell you. Alexander stood up and walked to the window, his mind a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. Thank you for your honesty, Martha. This changes many things. As Martha withdrew, Alexander made a decision. It was time to confront the only person who might have more answers, his father, Edward Blackwood. He found his father in the mansion's garden, enjoying his breakfast under the shade of a lush maple tree. Edward Blackwood, at 60 years old, was still an imposing figure, with his silver hair and penetrating gaze. Father, we need to talk, said Alexander, sitting across from him. Edward looked up from his newspaper, arching an eyebrow. What's the matter, son? You look worried. Alexander took a deep breath before speaking. Father, what do you know about Mary Blackwood and the necklace that disappeared with her? Edward's face visibly paled. For a moment it seemed he was going to deny all knowledge, but then his shoulders slumped with the weight of a long-kept secret. I see you've been digging into the past, he said in a tired voice. Mary was my aunt, my father's younger sister. She was a beautiful and rebellious woman. She fell in love with a gardener who worked on the family estate and ran away with him, taking the necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. And what happened after that? Alexander pressed. Edward averted his gaze. My father, your grandfather, was furious. Not so much about Mary's escape, but about the loss of the necklace. It was more than just a jewel, son. It was the symbol of a pact, of an alliance between the Blackwoods and another powerful family. What kind of pact? Alexander asked, feeling he was approaching a crucial truth. A marriage agreement, Edward replied. The necklace was supposed to pass to the Blackwood bride of each generation, sealing the union between the families. By taking it, Mary not only dishonored the family, but also jeopardized an alliance that had lasted for generations. Alexander processed the information, trying to connect the dots. And what happened to Mary? Did they find her? Edward shook his head. We never saw her again. My father hired someone to look for her, but things got out of hand. I never knew the details, but the man came back saying the matter was resolved. The necklace never reappeared. Until now, Alexander murmured. What do you mean? Edward asked, alarmed. Alexander was about to tell him about Emily and her necklace when he saw Sophia approaching through the garden. His fiancée wore a white dress that contrasted with the somber expression on her face. Good morning, Mr. Blackwood, Alexander, Sophia greeted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Am I interrupting something important? Not at all, dear, Edward replied, quickly composing himself. We were just chatting about some family matters. Alexander noticed how his father avoided looking directly at Sophia. Did he suspect something too? Alexander, darling, could we talk in private? Sophia asked, her tone sweet, but with a hint of urgency. Of course, Alexander replied, standing up. Father, we'll continue this conversation later. As he walked away with Sophia, Alexander couldn't help but notice the worried look his father gave them. It was clear there was more at stake than anyone was willing to admit. Sophia led him to a secluded corner of the garden, making sure no one could hear them. Alexander, we need to talk about the wedding, she began, her voice tense. I think we should move it up. Move it up, Alexander repeated, surprised. Why the rush? Sophia avoided his gaze. I just think it's best for everyone. The sooner we unite our families, the better. Alexander narrowed his eyes, suspicious. Sophia, does this have anything to do with Emily's necklace? Sophia's reaction was instantaneous. Her eyes widened and her body visibly tensed. Why do you mention that necklace? It has nothing to do with us. Are you sure? Alexander pressed. Because I have the feeling you know more than you're saying. Before Sophia could respond, a scream from the mansion broke the tension of the moment. It was Emily's voice. Without thinking twice, Alexander ran towards the house, closely followed by Sophia. Upon reaching the entrance, they encountered a chaotic scene. Emily was on the floor, sobbing, while Martha tried to console her. What happened? Alexander demanded to know. Between tears, Emily managed to articulate, "My necklace. It's disappeared. Someone entered my room and took it." Alexander felt the world stop for an instant. The necklace, the key to the entire mystery, had vanished. He looked around seeking answers, and his eyes met Sophia's. In them he thought he saw a flash of relief. The disappearance of the necklace marked a turning point. Now, Alexander was sure there were forces working in the shadows to keep the secrets of the past hidden, but he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. While confusion reigned in the Blackwood mansion, a figure observed the scene from a distance, hidden among the garden bushes. With a quick movement, he took out a phone and dialed a number. "It's done," the voice said. "The necklace has been recovered. But we have a problem. Young Blackwood is asking too many questions." "What are your orders?" The answer he received was clear and concise. "Watch him closely. If he gets too close to the truth, you know what to do." The figure hung up the phone and disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of secrets and threats that threatened to destroy the foundations of the Blackwood family. The disappearance of Emily's necklace had plunged the Blackwood mansion into a state of agitation and distrust. Alexander, determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, decided to take drastic measures. That morning, he called a meeting in the main hall, where Sophia, his father Edward, Emily and Martha, the housekeeper, were present. "I've gathered you all here because recent events cannot be ignored," Alexander began, his voice firm but laden with tension. "The necklace that Emily possessed was not a simple jewel, but a key piece in our family's history. Its disappearance is not a coincidence." Edward shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Sophia maintained an impassive expression. Emily, for her part, seemed on the verge of tears. "Father," Alexander continued, addressing Edward, "I need you to tell me the whole truth about Mary Blackwood and the pact you mentioned." Edward sighed deeply before speaking. "As I told you, Mary was my aunt. The necklace she took was more than a family jewel. It was the symbol of an alliance between the Blackwoods and the Sterlings, one of the most influential families in America at that time." "The Sterlings?" Sophia interrupted, her voice barely a whisper. Alexander noticed how his fiancée paled at hearing that name. "Do you know that family, Sophia?" Sophia seemed to hesitate before answering. "The Sterlings were partners of my family. But that was a long time ago." Edward continued his account. "The pact stipulated that each generation of Blackwoods should unite in marriage with a Sterling. The necklace passed from one Blackwood bride to the next, sealing the alliance. When Mary fled with the necklace, she not only broke tradition but also endangered decades of political and economic agreements between the families." "And what happened next?" Alexander asked, feeling he was approaching a crucial truth. "The Sterlings were furious. They threatened to withdraw all their support from the Blackwoods if we didn't recover the necklace and restore the alliance. Your grandfather took desperate measures." Emily, who had remained silent until that moment, spoke in a trembling voice. "My grandmother used to tell stories about an ancestor who had fled from her rich family for love. I always thought they were just tales, but—" Alexander approached Emily, his eyes fixed on hers. "Emily, I believe you are a descendant of Mary Blackwood. The necklace you had was the proof." A sepulchral silence fell over the room. Sophia was the first to break it. "This is madness," she said, standing up. "You can't really believe that a Maid is part of the Blackwood family." "Why not, Sophia?" Alexander retorted, his tone challenging. "Do you perhaps know something more that you're not telling us?" Before Sophia could respond, the door to the hall burst open. A tall, elegant man in his 60s entered with a firm step. "I believe I can clarify some things," said the newcomer. Edward jumped to his feet, his face a mask of surprise and fear. "Richard Sterling, what are you doing here?" Richard Sterling, patriarch of the Sterling family, scanned the room with his gaze before responding. "I've come to claim what is rightfully ours. The necklace must return to Sterling hands." Alexander stepped between Richard and Emily, protective. "And what makes you think you have any right to that jewel?" Richard smiled, but it was a cold, calculating smile. "Because, young Blackwood, that necklace is more than a simple jewel. It's the key to a power beyond anything you can imagine." Sophia stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "Uncle Richard, please." "Uncle?" Alexander exclaimed, looking at Sophia with disbelief. "You know this man?" The tension in the room was palpable. Sophia, caught between loyalty to her family and the secrets she had kept, seemed to crumble. "Alexander, I didn't want you to find out like this. The Sterlings are my mother's family. Our engagement, it was arranged to restore the old alliance." The revelation fell like a bomb. Alexander stepped back, feeling the ground opening beneath his feet. "All this time and our love was a lie?" "No," Sophia exclaimed, tears in her eyes. "My feelings for you are real, Alexander. But there are bigger things at stake here." Richard Sterling advanced, his presence dominating the room. "The necklace, young ones. It's time for it to return where it belongs." Emily, who had remained silent, suddenly spoke with a strength that surprised everyone. "The necklace was my grandmother's, and before her, her mother's. If anyone has a right to it, it's me." Richard turned to her, his eyes dangerously bright. "Ah, the little descendant of Mary. Your existence has been an inconvenience to our plans for a long time." "What do you mean?" Alexander asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. "I mean, young Blackwood, that we have been watching Mary's lineage for generations, waiting for the right moment to recover what is ours." Edward, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Richard, this has gone too far. The old alliances no longer make sense in the modern world." Richard turned to Edward, his voice laden with contempt. "Ah, Edward, always so weak. Do you think this is just about business? The necklace is the key to an ancestral power, a secret that our families have guarded for centuries." Alexander, feeling the situation slipping out of his hands, made a decision. "No one will take that necklace until we know the whole truth. And if it has disappeared, we'll find the person responsible." Richard smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Watch your words, young Blackwood. You're playing with forces you don't understand." Suddenly the lights in the mansion flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. When they came back on seconds later, Richard Sterling had vanished. The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander looked around at the shocked and frightened faces of his family and loved ones. He knew he had just crossed a point of no return. The secrets of the past were emerging, and with them dangers he could never have imagined. "This isn't over," Alexander said, his voice firm despite the fear he felt. "We're going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes." As the group dispersed, each lost in their own thoughts and fears, no one noticed the figure observing them from the garden. Professor James, the Blackwood family's old mentor, had witnessed the entire scene from the shadows. With a tired sigh, he took an old locket from his pocket. "The time has come," he murmured to himself. "The fate of both families is at stake, and only the truth can save them." With slow but determined steps, Professor James walked away from the mansion. He knew that soon he would have to reveal secrets he had kept for decades, secrets that could change the course of the Blackwood and Sterling families' history forever. Meanwhile, in the mansion, Alexander faced the most difficult task of his life, uncovering the truth about his family, his love, and a mysterious power that seemed to be at the center of everything. With Emily by his side, an unexpected ally in this storm of secrets, and Sophia, whose loyalty he now questioned, Alexander knew that the path to the truth would be fraught with danger. Night fell over New York City, enveloping the Blackwood mansion in shadows. But in the darkness, the secrets of the past were beginning to take shape, preparing to come to light and change everyone's destiny forever. The following morning dawned gray over New York City, as if the sky itself reflected the confusion and pain reigning in the Blackwood mansion. Alexander, after a sleepless night of reflection, found himself in his study, surrounded by old family documents and faded photographs. A soft knock on the door interrupted his musings. It was Emily, with a coffee tray in her hands and an expression of concern on her face. "Mr. Alexander, I thought you might need this," she said, placing the tray on the desk. Alexander looked at her, noticing for the first time how much she resembled the woman in the old photograph, Mary Blackwood. "Thank you, Emily. And please, just call me Alexander. After all, we might be family." Emily nodded, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Alexander, there's something I need to show you. Last night, after everything that happened, I remembered something my grandmother gave me before she passed." With trembling hands, Emily took a small silver locket from her pocket. "I always thought it was just a simple family keepsake, but now—" Alexander took the locket, examining it carefully. On its surface, finely engraved, was the same rose symbol that adorned the missing necklace. "Emily, this is— May I open it?" With Emily's permission, Alexander opened the locket. Inside, he found a small folded paper. Carefully, he unfolded it, revealing a message written in elegant but faded handwriting. "To my dear daughter, the true treasure is not in the necklace but in the heart of our family. Seek the truth in the House of Roses. With eternal love, Mary." Alexander read the message aloud, his mind working at full speed. "The House of Roses. Does that sound familiar to you, Emily?" Emily shook her head, but her eyes lit up with a sudden revelation. "Wait, my grandmother used to talk about an old estate where she grew up. She called it Rosewood, because it was surrounded by rose gardens." "We need to find that estate," said Alexander, standing up. "It could be the key to this entire mystery." Before they could make further plans, the study door burst open. It was Sophia, her eyes reddened and a look of determination on her face. "Alexander, we need to talk," she said, ignoring Emily's presence. "Alone." Emily, catching the hint, was about to leave, but Alexander stopped her. "No, Emily, stay. There are no more secrets between us." Sophia seemed to want to protest, but finally yielded. "Fine. Alexander, I know you're angry and confused, but I need you to listen to me. There are things about my family, about the Sterlings, that even I didn't know until recently." "Like what?" Alexander asked, his voice cold. Sophia took a deep breath before continuing. "The necklace. It's not just a jewel. It's the key to something much bigger. My Uncle Richard told me last night that there's a secret society formed by the most powerful families in America. The necklace is the symbol of leadership of that society." Alexander and Emily exchanged looks of astonishment. "A secret society? Sophia, do you realize how absurd that sounds?" "I know, but it's the truth. And there's more," Sophia continued. "The society not only controls a large part of the country's economy, but they say they possess ancestral knowledge, powers that go beyond what we can imagine." Emily, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "And what does my family have to do with all this?" Sophia looked at her, a mixture of pity and wariness in her eyes. "Your ancestor, Mary Blackwood, didn't just run away with the necklace. She took with her an ancient book, a grimoire that contains the society's deepest secrets. Without that book, and without the necklace, the society's power is incomplete." Alexander collapsed into his chair, overwhelmed by the revelations. "And our engagement? Was it all a farce to recover the necklace?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "At first, yes, it was my Uncle Richard's idea. But Alexander, my feelings for you are real. I truly fell in love." Before Alexander could respond, a new visitor burst into the study. It was Professor James, the Blackwood family's old mentor, with a grave expression on his wrinkled face. "I see the truths are beginning to come to light," the old man said, closing the door behind him. "But there's still much you don't know." Alexander stood up, surprised by the man's appearance. "Professor James, what are you doing here?" "I've come to fulfill a promise made many years ago, Alexander," Professor James responded. "A promise to Mary Blackwood." Silence fell over the room as everyone assimilated the news. Professor James took out the old locket he had been keeping from his pocket. "This locket contains the exact location of the Rosewood estate," he explained. "Mary entrusted it to me before she disappeared, with instructions to deliver it to her descendant when the right time came." Emily stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the locket. "And you believe that time has come?" Professor James nodded solemnly. The balance between the families is in danger. The power that the secret society seeks must not fall into the wrong hands. Here it's time for the truth to come to light, and for Mary Blackwood's legacy to be fulfilled. Alexander took the locket, feeling the weight of history and destiny in his hands. What should we do now? You must go to Rosewood, Professor James replied. There you will find the answers you seek, but be careful. You're not the only ones looking for those answers. Richard Sterling and his allies will do everything possible to get there first. Sophia, who had listened to everything in silence, finally spoke. I'll go with you. I know you don't trust me, but I know my uncle's plans. I can help. Alexander looked at Emily and then at Sophia, aware that he was about to embark on a journey that would change their lives forever. All right, we'll go together. But Sophia, if this is a trap— It's not, Sophia interrupted. I swear on my life. Professor James looked at the three of them, a mixture of hope and concern in his tired eyes. The fate of many is in your hands now. The truth awaits you at Rosewood, but so do great dangers. Go with care and remember, the true power is not in the necklace or in any ancient book, but in the bonds that unite us. As the group prepared to depart for Rosewood, none of them noticed the figure observing them from the garden. Richard Sterling, with a cold smile on his lips, took out his phone and dialed a number. They're on the move, he said in a low voice. Prepare everything. It's time to claim what is rightfully ours. The adventure was about to begin. Century-old secrets, ancestral powers, and the fate of two families converged in a dangerous game of truths and lies. Alexander, Emily, and Sophia faced a journey that would test not only their courage but also their hearts. Meanwhile, somewhere in the vast expanse of New York City, the missing necklace glowed faintly, as if it knew it would soon play a crucial role in the outcome of this story of love, power, and betrayal. The road wound through the mountains, moving further and further away from the bustling New York City. In the car, Alexander drove in silence, his mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Beside him, Emily looked out the window, her grandmother's locket clutched tightly in her hands. In the back seat, Sophia alternated between nervously checking her phone and casting cautious glances at her travel companions. The silence inside the vehicle was so thick it could almost be cut with a knife. Finally, it was Emily who dared to break it. Alexander, she said softly, do you think we'll find answers at Rosewood? Alexander sighed, his eyes fixed on the road. I hope so, Emily, for all our sakes. Sophia leaned forward, her voice laden with a mixture of anxiety and determination. We must be prepared for anything. My Uncle Richard will stop at nothing to obtain the necklace and the grimoire. And you, Sophia? Alexander asked, glancing at her briefly in the rearview mirror. How far are you willing to go? The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded with implications. Sophia took a moment to respond, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Alexander, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm on your side. Our side, she said, including Emily in her gaze. What started as a mission for my family has become something more. I want the truth as much as you do. Emily turned to look at Sophia, her eyes scrutinizing the face of the woman she had until recently considered her rival. Why should we trust you? Because, Sophia replied, her voice breaking, if what my uncle says is true, the power he seeks could destroy not only our families, but the entire country. I can't let that happen. The rest of the journey passed in a less tense silence, each of the car's occupants immersed in their own thoughts and fears. After hours of travel, they finally arrived at a small town in the Virginian mountains. According to Professor James's instructions, Rosewood should be nearby. We should ask in the town, Emily suggested, as Alexander parked the car in the central square. The trio got out of the vehicle, attracting curious glances from the locals. It wasn't common to see strangers in this remote corner of Virginia. They approached an old man resting on a bench in the square. Excuse me, sir, Alexander began. We're looking for an estate called Rosewood. Do you know if it's nearby? The old man looked at them suspiciously, his wrinkled eyes narrowing. Rosewood, it's been years since anyone's asked about that place. They say it's cursed. Emily stepped forward, showing the locket to the old man. Please, it's very important that we find it. It has to do with our family. Upon seeing the locket, the old man's eyes widened. The silver rose. You must be the ones she was expecting. She? Sophia asked, intrigued. "The Guardian," the old man replied in a low voice, as if afraid of being overheard. "A woman arrived many years ago saying she was waiting for the heirs of the Rose. She's been taking care of Rosewood ever since." Alexander, Emily, and Sophia exchanged looks of amazement. Could it be possible that someone had been waiting for their arrival all these years? The old man gave them precise directions to reach Rosewood, warning them to be careful. "There are dark forces surrounding that place," he told them as they walked away. "May the light protect you." Following the old man's directions, they soon found themselves in front of an imposing wrought-iron gate. Beyond it, among the thick vegetation, an old mansion could be glimpsed. Rosewood. "This is it," Emily murmured, her voice barely a whisper. As they approached the gate, it opened with a creak as if it had been expecting them. A shiver ran down the spines of all three. They walked along a path bordered by rose bushes, their intensely red flowers contrasting with the green of the leaves. The air was heavy with a sweet and intoxicating aroma. Upon reaching the main door of the mansion, it opened before they could knock. An elderly woman with white hair and deep blue eyes greeted them with a serene smile. "I've been waiting for you," the woman said. "I am Hope, the Guardian of Rosewood. Come in, there's much you need to know." Alexander, Emily, and Sophia entered the mansion, marveling at the beauty of the place. Despite the years, Rosewood maintained a timeless elegance, as if it were frozen in the past. Hope led them to a room where a large portrait dominated the wall. In it, a young Mary Blackwood smiled, the famous necklace adorning her neck. "Mary knew this day would come," Hope said, her voice laden with emotion. "The day when her descendants would come to claim their inheritance and face the destiny she couldn't change." "You knew Mary Blackwood?" Emily asked, astonished. Hope nodded. "She was my grandmother. She entrusted me with the task of protecting this place and the secrets it holds until the right time came." Alexander stepped forward. "What secrets? What is this necklace really, and why is it so important?" Hope approached a bookshelf and extracted an ancient book bound in leather with the rose symbol engraved on its cover. "This is the grimoire that Mary took with her when she fled. It contains ancestral knowledge, secrets that could change the course of history if they fall into the wrong hands." "The secret society," Sophia murmured. "Exactly," Hope confirmed. "A society that has manipulated America's destiny from the shadows for centuries. Mary discovered their plans and decided she had to stop them." "And the necklace?" Alexander asked. "The necklace is the key," Hope replied. "Without it, the secrets of the grimoire cannot be fully deciphered. Mary hid it to prevent the society from accessing all its power." Emily, who had been listening attentively, spoke. "And why us? Why now?" Hope smiled sadly. "Because the balance is in danger. The society is closer than ever to gathering all the elements necessary to unleash a power they shouldn't control. You are the chosen ones to stop them." Suddenly, the sound of engines interrupted the conversation. Alexander looked out the window and saw several black vehicles approaching the mansion. "They've arrived," Hope said, her voice filled with urgency. "Richard Sterling and his men. We must act quickly." "What do we do?" Sophia asked, fear evident in her voice. Hope went to a wall and pressed a hidden panel, revealing a secret passage. "This way. I'll take you to the place where Mary hid the necklace. It's time for you to claim your inheritance and face your destiny." As they entered the secret passage, the sound of doors being forced echoed through the mansion. The race against time had begun. Alexander took Emily's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Sophia followed close behind, her loyalty tested once again. The fate of two families, the power of a secret society, and centuries-old secrets converged at that moment. In the depths of Rosewood, Alexander, Emily, and Sophia were about to discover truths that would change their lives forever. As they advanced through the dark tunnel, guided by the light of a lamp that Hope carried, the echo of their steps mingled with the accelerated beating of their hearts. The truth awaited them at the end of the path, but so did unimaginable dangers. Rosewood, a silent witness to forbidden loves and century-old secrets, prepared to reveal its deepest mysteries. And with each step they took, Alexander, Emily, and Sophia drew closer to a destiny that could unite them forever or irrevocably separate them. The secret passage serpentined beneath rosewood, taking Alexander, Emily, Sophia, and Hope deeper into the bowels of the earth. The air grew denser and colder as they advanced, illuminated only by the faint light of Hope's lamp. "How much further?" Sophia asked, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "Not much," Hope replied, her serene voice contrasting with the tension of the moment. Mary chose this place carefully. She knew it wouldn't be easy to find. As they walked, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about everything they had discovered in such a short time. His world, which he thought he knew so well, had crumbled in a matter of days. He looked at Emily, who walked beside him with determination, and felt a wave of admiration for her strength. Suddenly, Hope stopped in front of a wall that looked the same as all the others in the tunnel. Carefully, she ran her hand over the rough surface until she found what she was looking for, a small, barely perceptible indentation. "Emily," Hope said, turning to the young woman, "I need your locket." Emily, understanding the importance of the moment, took off the locket and handed it to Hope. The elderly woman inserted it into the indentation and turned it. A click resonated in the silence of the tunnel, and the wall began to move, revealing a hidden chamber. The four entered the secret room, their eyes slowly adjusting to the dim light. In the center of the chamber, on a stone pedestal, rested an ornate box. "There it is," Hope murmured. "Mary Blackwood's legacy." Alexander stepped forward, but Hope stopped him with a gesture. "Wait. There's something you need to know before opening that box. A secret that Mary made me swear to keep until this moment." The three young people turned to Hope, expectant. "The necklace," Hope began, "is not just a key to the grimoire. It's much more than that. It contains within itself an ancient power, one that the secret society has coveted for centuries." "What kind of power?" Alexander asked, his voice barely a whisper. Hope took a deep breath before continuing. "It is said that whoever possesses the necklace and knows how to use it can see the future and change it. But that power comes at a terrible price. Each time it's used, it consumes a bit of its bearer's soul." Emily gasped, bringing a hand to her mouth. "Is that why Mary hid it?" Hope nodded. "Mary discovered that the society planned to use the necklace to manipulate America's destiny to ensure their eternal dominion. She couldn't allow it, so she fled with the necklace and the grimoire." Sophia, who had been unusually silent, spoke. "My uncle, does he know about this?" "It's likely that he does," Hope answered. "The leaders of the society have passed down this knowledge from generation to generation, waiting for the day when they could recover the necklace." Alexander approached the box, his mind processing all this new information. "And what are we supposed to do? Destroy it?" Hope shook her head. "The necklace cannot be destroyed by normal means. Mary believed it should be protected, used only in cases of extreme necessity, and by someone with the moral strength to resist its temptation." Emily stepped forward, her voice firm despite the trembling in her hands. "I am Mary's descendant. It must be my responsibility." "Emily, no," Alexander said, taking her hand. "It's too dangerous." Before they could argue further, a rumble echoed through the tunnel. Voices and footsteps were rapidly approaching. "They found us," Sophia said, panic evident in her voice. Hope acted quickly, opening the box. Inside, the necklace gleamed with its own light, the silver rose emitting a hypnotic glow. "You must decide now," Hope urged. "The necklace must be protected at all costs." Emily extended her hand towards the necklace, but Alexander stopped her. "Wait, there's another option. We can share this burden." "What do you mean?" Emily asked, confused. "If the three of us touch the necklace at the same time, maybe we can dilute its power, make it less dangerous for a single person," Alexander explained. Sophia looked at them, doubt evident in her eyes. "Do you trust me for this?" Alexander and Emily exchanged a glance before nodding. "We're in this together," Alexander said. The three extended their hands towards the necklace. The moment their fingers touched the cold metal, a surge of energy coursed through their bodies. Images of the past and future flooded their minds. They saw Mary fleeing in the night, the secret society plotting in the shadows, and glimpses of an uncertain future that depended on their actions. When the vision ended, the three were gasping, overwhelmed by the experience. The necklace now glowed more intensely, as if it had awakened from a long sleep. "We've activated it," Hope said, her voice a mixture of awe and concern. Now you're connected to its power, for better or worse. Before they could fully recover, the chamber wall exploded in a cloud of dust and debris. Through the smoke, the imposing figure of Richard Sterling emerged, flanked by armed men. "Well, well," Richard said, his voice cold and calculating. "It seems we arrived just in time for the family reunion." Alexander stepped in front of Emily and Sophia, protective. "Uncle Richard," Sophia said, her voice trembling, "please, don't do this." Richard ignored his niece, his eyes fixed on the necklace that now hung around Emily's neck. "You've activated the necklace, fascinating, but I'm afraid your little adventure ends here. Hand over the necklace and the grimoire, and I might consider being merciful." Hope stepped forward, her small figure radiating surprising strength. "Richard Sterling, you have no idea of the power you're playing with. This is not your destiny." Richard let out a cold laugh. "Destiny? I make my own destiny, old woman. And now with that necklace, I'll make the destiny of all of America." Alexander, Emily, and Sophia looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. With the power of the necklace coursing through their veins, they knew they had a chance, however small. "Now," Alexander whispered. In an instant, chaos erupted in the underground chamber. Emily extended her hand, and to everyone's surprise, including her own, a burst of energy emanated from the necklace, knocking down several of Richard's men. Taking advantage of the confusion, Alexander grabbed the grimoire and ran towards the exit, closely followed by Emily and Sophia. Hope stayed behind, confronting Richard. "Stop them!" Richard roared, but it was too late. The young people had already entered the maze of tunnels. As they ran through the passageways, guided by an instinct they didn't fully understand, Alexander, Emily, and Sophia knew this was only the beginning. The power of the necklace now ran through their veins, uniting them in a way none of them had imagined possible. Behind them, the sound of pursuit echoed through the tunnels. Richard Sterling and the secret society would stop at nothing to obtain the necklace and the grimoire. As they emerged into the daylight, panting and scared but determined, the three young people faced an uncertain future. The fate of America, and perhaps the world, now depended on them. Rosewood, a silent witness to this new phase in a centuries-old battle, stood behind them as a reminder of everything that was at stake. The real test was just beginning, and Alexander, Emily, and Sophia knew their lives would never be the same again. With the power of the necklace pulsing between them, and the grimoire secure in their hands, they ventured into a world of shadows and secrets, determined to unravel the mysteries of the past and forge a new future. The adventure that had begun with a simple necklace now unfolded into an epic struggle between good and evil, with the fate of a nation hanging by a thread. Night had fallen over the Virginia mountains when Alexander, Emily, and Sophia finally stopped to rest. They had been fleeing for hours, instinctively using the power of the necklace to evade their pursuers. Exhausted and overwhelmed, they took refuge in a small cave hidden among the dense vegetation. "Do you think we've lost them?" Sophia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alexander cautiously peered out of the cave entrance. "For now, yes, but we can't let our guard down." Emily, sitting on the ground with the grimoire in her lap, absent-mindedly caressed the necklace. "I can't believe everything that's happened. This power. It's both terrifying and fascinating." Alexander sat down next to her, taking her hand. "I know. It feels like I've lived 1,000 lives in a single day." Sophia observed them, a mix of emotions crossing her face. I want you to know that I'm with you in this, completely. What my Uncle Richard did, I can't support it." Alexander and Emily exchanged a glance before nodding. "We believe you, Sophia," Alexander said. "We're in this together now." Silence fell over the group as each reflected on the day's events. It was Emily who finally spoke, her voice laden with determination. "We need to decipher the secrets of the grimoire. It's the only way to fully understand the power of the necklace and how to stop the secret society." Alexander nodded, taking the ancient book. As he opened it, the pages seemed to come to life, symbols and texts in an unknown language glowing faintly in the darkness of the cave. "It's as if the necklace allows us to understand," Sophia murmured, amazed. As they immersed themselves in reading the grimoire, they discovered astonishing truths about the origin of the necklace and the secret society. The artifact, forged centuries ago by an ancient civilization, contained the power to alter the very fabric of reality. The secret society, initially formed to protect this knowledge, had become corrupted over time, seeking to use the power for its own benefit. According to this, Alexander said, pointing to a passage in the book, the necklace's power can only be fully utilized during a solar eclipse, and there's one scheduled for 3 days from now. That explains my uncle's urgency, Sophia commented. They must be planning something big. Emily stood up, pacing restlessly around the cave. We can't let that happen. We have to stop them. Suddenly the necklace began to glow intensely. The three felt a surge of energy course through their bodies, and before their eyes, images of the future unfolded like a movie. They saw New York City plunged into chaos, buildings collapsing and people fleeing in terror. At the center of the destruction, Richard Sterling, with the necklace in his possession, laughed as the sky darkened for the eclipse. The vision ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the three gasping and trembling. Is that what will happen if we don't stop them? Sophia asked, horrified. Alexander nodded gravely. It seems the necklace is showing us what we need to prevent. But how? Emily, with a new determination in her gaze, took the grimoire. The answer must be here. The necklace chose us for a reason. Together, we must have the power to change this future. As they immersed themselves once again in studying the grimoire, each began to feel changes within themselves. Alexander discovered he could perceive the thoughts and emotions of others with astonishing clarity. Emily developed the ability to manipulate small objects with her mind. Sophia, for her part, realized she could briefly see the immediate future, anticipating others' movements. Our powers, Alexander said, amazed. They're evolving. And working together, Emily added, we're stronger. Sophia, who had been looking towards the cave entrance, suddenly tensed. Someone's coming. Many people. The three went on alert, preparing for the worst. But when the figure emerged from the shadows, it wasn't Richard Sterling or any of his men. It was Professor James, the Blackwood family's old mentor, accompanied by a group of people wearing the same rose symbol as the necklace. We've found you, Professor James said, his voice filled with relief and urgency. There's no time to lose. The real battle is about to begin. Alexander stepped forward. Professor James, what's going on? Who are these people? The old man smiled tiredly. They are the Guardians, Alexander, the true protectors of the necklace's secret. We've been waiting for this moment for generations. Emily, still holding the grimoire, asked, Did you know this would happen? Not with certainty, Professor James replied, but we always knew the day would come when the necklace's power would be challenged, and that it would take pure hearts and brave souls to face the darkness. Sophia, who had remained silent, finally spoke. And me? How do I fit into all this? Professor James looked at her with compassion. Your role, Sophia, is as important as Alexander's and Emily's. The necklace chose all three of you for a reason. Together, you represent the balance necessary to handle its power. As the group left the cave, Professor James explained the plan. They had to travel to a sacred place in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, where the necklace's power could be channeled during the eclipse to counter the secret society's plans. But remember, Professor James warned, the necklace's power is seductive. Many have succumbed to its temptation. You must remain united and true to your values, or all will be lost. As they prepared for the journey that would determine America's fate, Alexander, Emily, and Sophia looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They were no longer just three young people caught in a web of family secrets. Now they were the guardians of an ancient power, united by destiny and a connection that transcended time and space. Dawn approached, tinting the sky with shades of pink and gold. With each step they took towards their destination, the three felt the weight of responsibility on their shoulders, but also the strength that their union gave them. The final battle was approaching, and with it the promise of a future that was yet to be written. The necklace glowed softly, a constant reminder of everything that was at stake and the power that now flowed through their veins. Alexander, Emily, and Sophia advanced towards the unknown, their destinies intertwined by an ancient power and a love they were only beginning to understand. The adventure that had begun with a simple necklace now unfolded into an epic struggle for the soul of a nation, and perhaps the entire world. The sun rose over the ancient Appalachian Mountains, its golden rays bathing the imposing peaks and deep valleys. At the base of a sacred mountain, Alexander, Emily, and Sophia prepared for the moment that would define not only their lives, but the destiny of America and perhaps the entire world. Professor James and the Guardians had established a perimeter around the sacred site, keeping it clear of hikers and curious onlookers. The total solar eclipse was just hours away from beginning. "Are you ready?" Professor James asked, his voice laden with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Alexander took Emily's hand, and then Sophia's. The three nodded, their eyes reflecting an unshakable determination. "We were born for this moment," Alexander responded, feeling the power of the necklace pulsing between them. Suddenly, the sound of helicopters broke the morning calm. Richard Sterling and his forces had arrived. "Quickly," shouted Professor James. "You must climb to the summit of the mountain. It's the focal point of energy." As Alexander, Emily, and Sophia began their ascent up the ancient path, the Guardians prepared to face the forces of the secret society. Halfway up, they came face to face with Richard Sterling, who had been transported to the mountain by one of the helicopters. "Stop right there!" Richard roared, his eyes gleaming with unbridled greed. "The power of the necklace belongs to me." Sophia stepped forward, confronting her uncle. "You're wrong, Uncle. This power doesn't belong to anyone. It's a responsibility, not a right." Richard let out a bitter laugh. "You've always been weak, Sophia, just like your father. You don't understand the true potential of what we have before us. We could rule not just America, but the entire world." Alexander placed himself protectively in front of Emily and Sophia. "Power corrupts, Richard. And you're already too corrupted." With a cry of rage, Richard lunged at them, but at that moment the power of the necklace activated. A wave of energy emanated from the three young people, stopping Richard in his tracks and making him stagger to the edge of the cliff. "No!" Sophia cried, extending her hand to save her uncle from a fatal fall. As Sophia struggled to keep Richard safe, Alexander and Emily continued their ascent. The sky began to darken as the moon approached the sun. Upon reaching the summit, they found an ancient ceremonial platform. In the center, a stone pedestal with the exact shape of the necklace awaited them. "This is it," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. "I can feel it." Below, the battle between the Guardians and the forces of the secret society intensified. Professor James led the defense, his elderly figure radiating surprising strength and determination. The eclipse began, plunging the Appalachian Mountains into supernatural darkness. The necklace around Emily's neck began to glow with blinding intensity. "Now!" Alexander shouted. Emily placed the necklace on the pedestal just as the totality of the eclipse reached its peak. A column of light surged from the mountain, connecting earth to sky. At that moment, Alexander, Emily, and Sophia, who had managed to climb up dragging a defeated Richard, joined hands, forming a circle around the necklace. Visions of the past and future flooded their minds. They saw the complete history of the necklace, from its creation by an ancient Native American civilization to the present moment. They understood that the true power of the necklace was not to control destiny, but to inspire people to forge their own path, to fight for a better future. With this revelation, the three channeled the energy of the necklace. An expansive wave of light and energy spread from the mountain, sweeping across the entire Appalachian range and beyond. When the light dissipated and the sun shone again, something had changed. Richard and his followers found themselves stripped of any desire for power or domination. The Guardians lowered their weapons, feeling that their centuries-old mission had finally come to an end. Alexander, Emily, and Sophia descended from the mountain, exhausted but victorious. The necklace, having fulfilled its purpose, had disintegrated into golden dust. Professor James greeted them at the foot of the mountain, tears of joy in his eyes. "You've done it. You've rewritten America's destiny." In the days and weeks that followed, the changes became evident. The corruption and greed that had plagued the country for so long began to fade. People felt inspired to work together for a better future. The secret society dissolved, its members now dedicating themselves to charitable causes and social progress. Richard Sterling, transformed by the experience, turned himself in to the authorities, determined to make amends for his mistakes. Alexander, Emily, and Sophia found themselves at the center of this new era of hope. Although the necklace had disappeared, the bond between them remained stronger than ever. One afternoon, as they watched the sunset from the restored Rosewood estate, Alexander took Emily's and Sophia's hands. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her voice full of possibilities. Sophia smiled, a peace she had never known before reflected in her eyes. "I think our adventure is just beginning." Alexander nodded, looking towards the horizon. "The necklace showed us the way, but the future is ours to shape. Together we can do anything." As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in golden and rosy hues, the three embraced, united by a love that transcended the conventional and by the promise of a bright future. The legacy of the necklace would live on through them and future generations, not as an object of power, but as a symbol of hope, unity, and the strength of true love. And so, in the heart of America, a new story began to be written. A story of three souls intertwined by destiny, determined to forge a future where the magic of love and kindness would overcome any darkness. The necklace that once threatened to destroy everything had become the seed of a new beginning. And although the challenges they would face would be many, Alexander, Emily, and Sophia knew that as long as they were together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Night fell over Rosewood, the stars shining as silent witnesses to this new era. And in the garden, among the rose bushes that had guarded so many secrets, three hearts beat in unison, promising eternal love and a future full of hope for America and for themselves.